Welcome back. Let's take you here now. South Africa has recorded a decline in poaching numbers. In 2022, 124 rhinos were killed in the Kruger National Park. The number of rhinos poached in the Kruger National Park represented a 40% decrease compared with those killed for their horns in 2021. 132 arrests were affected during the 2022 year for rhino poaching, 23 in the Skukuza area in Mpumalanga, 49 in KwaZulu-Natal, and the balance in Limpopo. Now, let's discuss this further. We're now joined via Zoom by Forestry, Fisheries and Environment Department spokesperson, Albi Modise. Albi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. You know, this sounds like good news. At this rate and pace, would you say we are winning then the war against rhino poaching?
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity. I think we are seeing some significant wins, but it's also fair to say that we still have a long way to go to ultimately nip this problem in the bud. But thus far, we are quite comfortable that all the investments we've made in terms of rhino conservation, all the resources that have been put into making sure that law enforcement continues to play its part in making sure that we deal with poachers, that all of those are beginning to yield dividends, and we are quite thankful and grateful that all our different parks agencies and all our the national parks agencies as well, together with law enforcement and the tax authorities, revenue services, are continuing to play a significant role in that regard.
So 132 arrests were conducted then in 2022. I mean, are these significant arrests? I mean, are there successful prosecutions, especially when you start looking at kingpins?
They are. I mean, we can, for example, give you an example of a kingpin from Mozambique who's linked to rhino poaching, known within the circles as Navarra, who was arrested in Maputo in a sting operation. That was a joint operation with the Mozambican authorities and the Wildlife Justice Commission. And that particular sting operation saw the arrest of Simon Tivani, popularly known within the circles as Navarra. But also, we have also seen the arrest of South African nationals in Singapore in possession of 34 kilograms of rhino horn. And then the South African authorities continue to work closely with authorities in Singapore to ensure that on an ongoing basis, should it happen that the rhino horn leak through the ports of entry and exit, that we have a mechanism to intercept that on the other side. We've got a memorandum of understanding with China, and that's beginning to yield dividends because we're working closely with the Chinese authorities. We have a memorandum of understanding with Mozambique, and therefore the arrest of Navarra must be understood within the context of our collaboration with Mozambique. We have similar arrangements with Vietnam as well, where there's been a number of arrests linked to rhino poaching.
I mean, how important are then these relationships with other countries, particularly the ones that you've mentioned, China, Singapore, Mozambique, and are authorities, giving you that helping hand, particularly because, we know that the citizens in those countries are very much, involved in some of the buying and the selling of these rhino horns?
Yes. Look, those are important because, remember, poaching happens in South Africa. But the brutal truth is that it's been fueled and instigated from outside of South Africa. So the memorandum of understanding with Mozambique is important because Mozambique is just adjacent to the Kruger National Park. The memorandum of understanding and most of the incursions into the Kruger happens from the Mozambican side of the Kruger National Park. And that MOU with Mozambique is beginning to yield those dividends as exemplified with the Navarra case. The memorandum of understanding with Vietnam is important because there are countries that have been termed as consumer countries. And those are countries that most of the time when the rhino horn leaves our shores, they end up in those countries for consumption. And therefore, it's important for us to have those collaborations with Vietnam as well, with China, with Laos, and because those have been identified as some of the potential consumer countries where we need to make sure that we're collaborative with those governments to nip the problem in the bud. But also there are those countries that have been seen as transit states. Right? These are states that are used by poachers and their gangs to transport the rhino horn via those countries to go to the consumption states. And so those MOUs help because poaching isn't happening at home. It's part of the international illicit wildlife trade. So much as we deal with the rhino horn in South Africa, in other countries like Kenya, they're dealing with the issue of elephant ivory that has been fueled at the global level. So it's important that all our tentacles reach all the different parts of the world to ensure that we continue our efforts to arrest to do with the poachers, but also deal harshly with those that fuel those activities.
You know, talking about collaborations, how significant has the private sector, particularly in this country, helped in this decrease of 40%?
Look, private sector continues to play a significant role. I mean, much as when you look at the figures, you'll see that the number of poached rhino within the privately owned parks had increased. Private sector continues to play a significant role because they are part of our national efforts to grow the rhino population. So we have collaborations with the private rhino owners, which on an ongoing basis, where we discuss strategies and tactics to deal with poaching, where we work with them in order to ensure that we replicate some of the success stories from national parks and other areas. The replication of those stories would also include, among others, going to areas like KZN and share the experience with them. As you see, the numbers in KZN are worrisome, and we want to make sure that we continue to work with the provincial government in making sure that we nip the problem in the bud.
You know, my next question was going to be, what are some of the poaching trends you have noticed as the department, particularly when you start looking at those numbers in terms of the provinces, the various provinces with, as you've said, KwaZulu-Natal being a problem as well, but Mpumalanga also right up there in terms of numbers.
Exactly. I mean, we see Limpopo as well as an area that needs careful consideration, Northwest Province as well. KwaZulu-Natal is the one area that continues to be of significant interest to us. And the efforts at this areas like Isenberg are quite important, because remember, at the end of the day, KwaZulu-Natal is part of the tourism belt in South Africa. And therefore, it's important that we continue to grow the population in KZN as part of our growth of the tourism sector. So it's important that the ecotourism sector continues to benefit in the fact that we are the home of the biggest rhino population in the world. But of course, as you can see, the fact that we are a success story in terms of rhino conservation has attracted the interest of poachers, which is what we're dealing with right now. And we continue to work to ensure that South Africa remains the third mega diverse country in the world, but South Africa also remains the home of the rhino in the interest of the global community.
Albi Modise, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, Albi is from the Forestry, Fisheries and Environment Department.